My guest today is Jennifer Fraser. She is the founder of the Bullied Brain, an award-winning teacher, best-selling author, and unlikely whistleblower. Her new book, The Bullied Brain: Heal Your Scars and Restore Your Health, tells the story of her journey to repair after battling to protect students from teacher abuse and failing. With a PhD in comparative literature, she believed that there must be research that could help her recover. That's when she discovered what scientists know about the amazing powers we have within to repair our hurt brains. So welcome to the show, Jennifer. How lovely to have you here. How are you doing this morning over in Canada?
I'm doing wonderful, Madeleine. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking very forward to our
Ah,
conversation.
you're welcome, and likewise. So, as you know, my show is called Unbroken, and I know you from my Facebook group, so I know you know this question I always ask everyone, and I'm going to ask you is what does that word unbroken mean to you?
Well, I went as a middle-aged woman, so 5 years ago, I went to the police and I reported the child abuse that I endured in public school from the age of 13 when the grooming began until I was 17 and I stumbled away. And I suffered for 4 years at the hands of teachers. We had physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. And when I was speaking to the police, I started to cry and I said, they finally broke me. And after that time, I sort of went through my life with this kind of dissociated personality, this very broken self. And when I started to do the research on the neuroscience, which was 5 years ago, I realized no one can ever break you. Your brain is absolutely unbreakable, and it is the core of who you are. It is every decision you make, every feeling you have, every behavior, gesture, facial expression, it is your brain. And my brain is not broken, and no one's is.
And it was interesting reading your book because things that I felt or say about my own journey, I maybe didn't know the science behind it, but reading it, I always say that the real essence of me could never be broken. They could never touch that. And I think, oh, now I know that's my brain speaking to me, that inner fire or that, whatever we're born with, that's what's left, that core inside, isn't it?
Well, what was so interesting in the science was to discover that all forms of bullying and abuse, so these can be ones far less traumatic than what you endured as a child, but I mean, emotional abuse, emotional neglect, verbal abuse, all of these things that don't even touch the body, they can do unbelievable damage to the brain. You know, when you actually start to report these things, and I went to the Commissioner for Teacher Regulation, he ended up being completely corrupt. I have the corrupt reports sitting in my house. I took all of that to the ombudsperson's office. I tried to get the rep. And basically what you should do when you have adults behaving that way is rehabilitate them.
Yeah.
As we said at the beginning, our brains are completely innately wired to rehabilitate when we have issues. And when someone is behaving in a very aggressive, bullying way, that is a brain that has been traumatized. It's not natural, it's not healthy, it's not normal to behave that way. And so why don't we fix it rather than just
It makes
hide
you
it?
think of that expression, hurt people hurt people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I adapt that to hurt brains hurt.
yeah.
They hurt inside, they hurt other people, and they hurt themselves. But the bottom line is our brains are designed to heal. They are completely innately wired to recover. And this is what I found so inspiring is that no matter what you've been through, once you know the evidence-based practices, once you know the science, you can start a healing plan, literally put in a kind of medical intervention and get to work. And I just think all trauma victims need to know that science. It was all covered up. The government was invested in covering it up as well. So they didn't do anything either. And it actually, the whole story just became more tragic. I went from that school, I resigned in protest. And as I told them I was going to, resigned in protest, I started working at another private school. And I just was exhausted by the time I got there. And I just kept my head down. I had to learn all these different things because it was international baccalaureate. I'd never taught it before. So it was childhood. And from what happened at the other school, I knew it was being covered up. And, we all had our guesses about what was happening, but again, all covered up. And I just, by that point, was exhausted. It wasn't my problem. So then in my third year at the school, a student came up to me in October who I taught the year before. She's an international
This is the
student.
young woman that you name Ellen in the book, isn't it?
Yeah. This is Ellen in the book. Yeah, which is not her real name.
Yeah.
And she was an international student from China, and she'd been in the homestay program with the principal and his wife, and they had, I don't think their kids were at home, they have 3 adult children. And she was living with her father, who had come from Macau to be with her in her final year at school. And she was just a fabulous kid, absolutely brilliant and funny, and an amazing athlete, and just a genius, basically. And so she came up to me in the library and she said, "I need to talk to you." And, you have daughters, you can tell when there's something wrong. So we went outside and I said, "Well, what's the matter?" She said, "I'm being sexually harassed by a teacher." And I just, honestly, my heart just sank. I was like, "Don't tell me about it. I would have to take you to the Commissioner for Teacher Regulation. I have a legal duty to report. I'm so afraid for you. I don't think they're a safe place to go. I don't think they have the right. I don't think they're trying to protect students." Like, I just was so conflicted. And so I said to her, "Well, we need to go and speak. Let's go and speak to the principal. Mr. Calderwood will know what to do." And all of this is covered up. I'm telling you this, but nobody else knows this. In Canada, in my province where I teach, Commissioner for Teacher Regulation, everything, it's all covered up. It's all being swept under the carpet. She says to me, "It is Mr. Calderwood." It wasn't the abuse that really, really did the damage. It was the re-victimization on the part of the headmaster and the chaplain and the board and the Commissioner for Teacher Regulation. That was just so traumatizing, that everything he'd been taught, all this, have integrity, be an upstander, all of this was just a lie, was really hard to take. And he had to realize that sometimes if the system is broken, you just have to walk away from the system. It's very difficult to change it.
He was really let down, is what you're saying. Really let down by the people, for a start, that should have been in positions of power, the teachers, the ones that abused him, but then the others that could have made changes and supported him. They just let him down. So I'm just wondering, before we kind of come to the end here, what advice would you say to, I don't know, a parent that's maybe listening, or someone else that feels this resonates too much with them? They are getting bullied and they realize the negative chatter that they have inside their head is a sign of it's not good, it's negative. What would you advise someone to do?
Well, in the book, I use a lot of visualization and mindfulness techniques, not only because they're backed up by a lot of brain science research, but also because I found it to be a very effective way to start to, if you close your eyes and envision your brain, you have to understand that you might have internalized a mind bully. And that can make you feel horrible. It's always at you. It's always criticizing. Everything's your fault. There's no hope. It doesn't respect you. And you really have to identify that mind bully as a survival strategy. Your brain has brought that into you to kind of keep you safe. Just as if you burned your hand on the stove, your brain would never let you forget it. It would constantly remind you of it because that's how it keeps you alive. But you have to be the one in charge. It always has to be the mind that's in the driver's seat, and the brain is the engine. The brain is the power. But you're the only one that can tell your brain what the situation really is. It can't see anything. It gets all of its messages from you. So it's always the mind. So I encourage people, parents and students and teachers and coaches, everyone, what you need to do is close your eyes, do the deep breathing, because the deep breathing tells your brain there's no predator. You wouldn't be deep breathing if you were in danger. So do your deep breathing to let it know, look, we had time to have a conversation here. We're not in danger. And then you want to take the mind bully and you want to change it into an empathic coach. And I do a lot of work in the book showing how to listen to this different kind of voice. The empathic coach is curious. It believes in you. The empathic coach wants to see you succeed. So all of us have the capacity to do that. And that would be my sort of final point. But in the book, there's many exercises, there's lots of research, there's activation steps, there's a whole program to say, okay, look, if I'm worried about someone in my life, if I have bullying tendencies from what's happened to me, if I'm a victim, I've got to get to work. And I think it's going to be a grassroots movement. I think we are going to bring change. I'm really hopeful.
Good. That's the good place to end. There's always hope. I do believe there is always hope. Well, the time has just literally flown by. I could speak to you for hours. It's It's just so fascinating what we can do with it, but how it is the neuroplasticity that you talk about, how it is possible to remold it and to change it and to think in a different way. So just leaves me to thank you so much for getting up early over in Canada and being a guest today.